All right, looks like we are all back and ready to proceed. So it looks like we have, oh, hold on a second. My hair caught in my glasses. Uh, we have Chris with Community Lifeline. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you all for your time this morning. I'm stepping in.
You are so fast.
Pardon me?
You are so fast. You were here and now you're home.
I'm stepping in for Athena, and she left out the part that it was a Zoom meeting. So I came to your offices this morning, but fortunately, I'm very close. Anyway,
yes, thank you.
So do you want me to start?
Yep, go ahead, present what you have to us.
Okay, well, I'm going to present a project that Athena has been putting together for a while. A couple of you are going to already be familiar with it, and I'm not sure how many of you had enough time to go through the packet that was submitted and the 4-minute video. But so I'll just start with a brief synopsis of this, and then I will let you tell me how much you got to look at and what I can answer. So we are applying for a community project grant with Patty Murray and Derek Kilmer. And that grant amount is $1,239,278. And it is for a pallet shelter village. And some lands are being considered. What we are asking the county for here this morning is simply just a letter of support. We already have letters of support from the city, from the fire department, from Colleen Carmichael with Coyote Village, and National Northwest Alliance that just recently gave us a smaller grant. So the packet of information that we apply with also includes support letters. So that is basically what I'm asking for this morning. Our cutoff date to get all of the materials in is in a few days on the 10th of March. So I'll stop right there. You can tell me what you're familiar with or what you still need to be told about.
All right, great. I know I did have the opportunity to take a look at the pallet stove or pallet housing, and they look pretty amazing, going down to 40 degrees below zero. And
yeah. Yes, we actually visited this site several months ago, and I think other people have too. But yeah, they're the easiest and least expensive way to go, but it also allows us to give our clients a little bit more individuality instead of everybody sleeping in one huge room. It also will move us out from downtown and a residential neighborhood, which I think probably really needs to happen. The funding for this will be the fiscal year 2024. So we're looking at a year to a year and a half down the road before it all actually happens. And meanwhile, we will get our building assessed, which we own free and clear, and bought a few years back for $200,000, hoping that it's probably worth a little more because we've done some upgrades on the inside. So the sale of that building will also help with the building of this village, as we call it.
All right, great. Commissioners, do you have any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions or comments. I'm supportive of signing on the letter.
Great, thank you.
Yep, as am I. Commissioner Netherland?
Yeah, and where were you looking at placing this?
Well, and yes, we've met with the city with Jeff Knighton and Eric Inesco. I know he's here online too. There's a few possibilities. I actually went out this last week and walked two of those possibilities. One is at the end of C Street across 101. And I believe it's an ecology report because not all of the acreage out there is usable because it used to be the city dump many, many years ago. That's one of the possible locations. Another is at the end of Franklin Street. And when I drove, I wasn't exactly sure where the property was, but I think I could see that it's beyond a fenced area. And I have actually had a conversation with Mike Fox, who owns the Century Pavilion and the shelter, not shelters, but storage out there. And my first conversation was, no, he was probably going to expand his storage business. but I got a text from him a couple of days ago that when he gets back from Texas, we may talk further.
Madam Chair, would you mind if I pull somebody else into the conversation that's on here? The mayor?
No, go for
Oh,
it.
definitely.
Eric, are you available?
Yes.
So,
There we go.
hi, Eric. Mayor, since this is in your neighborhood, your folks and you are supportive of this, and are you part of the request asking for our support?
We are, and we did do a letter of support.
Okay, then I'm supportive.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Eric.
All right, sounds like you've got support from all three.
Okay,
So,
very good.
Mark, have we received a draft maybe of a letter?
Mhm.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
can get that going.
Yes. And
Okay.
if you get a chance, when you have the time, the video will answer a lot of questions for you. And it's only 4 minutes.
Yeah, plus they have other links to other things that they do too. I thought it was pretty interesting there. It's
Yeah.
not what I thought they were.
Yeah,
So I
it's
appreciate you sending that video or sending the video.
okay.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to explain the reason why I'm supportive of it is, we won't have any call on where, how, or any of that. That's going to be an issue that the city's going to have with their citizens and the like. The only thing I'm looking at here is I have the city asking us to be supportive of a project they're looking to do, and for them to bring to the community and have a discussion with that. That's why I'm supportive. I'm not supportive of any specific location or any of the other stuff. It's a task the city's willing to take on. I think it's a huge task. So instead, I'll just be thankful and let them battle it out, because it's not going to be an easy task to get done.
No, it isn't. There's going to be opposition no matter what we do, but we are preparing for that, and I'm appreciative of everybody's support.
Right. And well, and I believe that this was something that the homelessness task force brought up too. It was one of our topics. And I believe that there was a lot of support during that
Yeah.
task force. So,
Yes.
well, good luck.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to support services, Mark.
Thank you, Commissioner Trask. So our first item is Mr. Taylor. John, are you here? I actually don't see John.
I don't see John either.
I can take it on, and we received an application, I believe, for our Parks Advisory Board. So we have a 7-member board. Each member serves 4-year terms with 1 alternative and is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. We try and keep those boards full. In fact, I just actually went and talked to an organization within our community last week about the importance of advisory boards, and hopefully got a couple other applications that we'll see coming through. So we do have says every effort's made to fill the board with 2 members from each of the 3 commission districts with 1 at-large member. The purpose of the Mason County Parks and Trails Advisory Board is to provide guidance, direction, and recommendations regarding the planning, acquisition, developments, and operation of parks, trails, facilities, and programs. Currently, there is 1 member in District 1, 2 members in District 2, and 1 member in District 3. Dennis Hamilton has applied to be on the Parks Advisory Board and is in District 2 and is not a member of the Pacific Northwest Salmon Advisory Board. So I think that there was a question about whether he was still serving a role on that board. We contacted Mr. Hamilton, and he let us know that he was no longer serving in that capacity.
Okay, but he was on it. That's what, so they were accurate when they called in, because it's on the website, but he's no longer on it. So no conflict there should occur.
I'm not sure exactly when he got off of it, Commissioner Netherland, but yeah, as of now, he's not on it.
I was gonna say, some organizations update their websites every 5 years, so.
Yeah.
So I would be interested in interviewing.
Yep.
Same.
Well, we will get an interview set up for that then. This is when I miss Diane when she's not here. The next item I had for you is going over my level of authority. So this is something that I've actually worked with Diane on, talked to the commissioners a little bit about here and there, put it all together in terms of where we can create some additional efficiencies, but definitely want to make sure that the board is comfortable with moving forward. So I can tell you that it is my intent to always make sure that all three of my bosses are aware of what I'm doing and what I'm signing. Some of our tasks are fairly straightforward in the sense if something's already budgeted, then if there's a slight change, then I really don't think that it's worthy of spending board time to actually discuss and formally approve. And it takes time to actually get those things done. Time that we could be out recruiting, trying to fill new positions and such. So this here is a recommendation, and you'll see the resolution as it is revised. And basically it would say it's adding, so right now if there's budget for up to a $50,000 contract, then that's something that I could sign off on. But this would also include contract extensions. So still $50,000 threshold, but if there's a contract extension that needs to occur, then that's something that I would be able to sign off on and let the board know that I did, but not be required to go through a formal action. So any budgeted motor pool business. So this tends to be a fairly active part of our administration in the sense that we're constantly working with enterprise to make sure that we've got the vehicles and then options as they come up when a certain type of vehicle isn't available, or how do we actually go about getting some of those vehicles that need to be replaced that are hard to get. So as long as it's budgeted, then that's something that I could make a decision on. And then we added some information about correcting Scrivener's errors. So if we have errors, the intent of it was one way, but we're concerned about the language within a document. I feel that the board is under the same impression that we as management are, in the sense that this is how we entered into the contract. And if it's just correcting a Scrivener's error, then that's something that I could have the ability to do. Individual departments and offices have credit cards here in the county that in the past, I think, were brought before the board. I think that those are something that I could actually sign off on, of course, making the board aware. So we also receive letters from the State Liquor and Cannabis Board. And basically it's saying, do you have an opposition to us granting this license? We go through our departments and talk with them about it, mostly our Public Health and Community Services Department. And if they don't have a problem with it, then that's something that I could respond to. Or if they did have a problem with it, I could respond. I think in the latter, if there was a problem, definitely want to make sure all three commissioners are aware that we would be submitting a letter of opposition. I don't believe that we've done that very often. I think it's happened before, but not very often. So that would be out of the ordinary, and I would definitely let y'all know. And then in terms of the letters of support, so this is something that I'd like to discuss with you to make sure we're all on the same page. I can have individual discussions with each commissioner to determine if you're supportive of a letter of support or of a response that we provide to the legislature in terms of how does Mason County as a whole view this change in the law. And I work closely with our lobbyist, Deb, and so having the ability to actually sign off on some of those things would be great, just for timeliness. But in some of those instances, I think that a signature of an elected official is more valuable than a county administrator. And so in those cases, you would still receive letters of support coming before the board to actually get the board signatures on those. So if it's going to another elected official, I think that the weight of a commissioner's signature definitely carries more importance than a county administrator signature. So do you have any questions or would you like to discuss any of those?
Yeah, I would. One of the things we want to make sure, if we're going to find out from the commission whether we're supportive of something or not, I would always want to be brought back to the commission. I think it should be a unanimous thing. If it's not unanimous, then it should be discussed publicly. But at the same time, I worry that doing that type of meeting, let's check with Tim, because I don't remember if that's considered a serial meeting or a daisy chain meeting, but both of those are possibly illegal. So we need to make sure that if there's an action taken, that we're not violating the law. So just if you talk to Tim about that.
I will definitely check with Tim on that. I did not the intent here, so.
And the other thing is somehow we always have to bring everything back to us, and we should, because the one thing I would worry about, because I have seen, I want to point out, first of all, that you're right on when it comes to the liquor control one. I remember there was one time where one commissioner had a personal issue with a person. That was 10 years ago. And that's the only time I'd ever seen it even questioned in all the years. Talk about an automatic. And even then, that one still went through, because you can't just take a personal issue and stop something, but that was the attempt at the time. So I'd like to make sure that I threw that in there, but I worry about a little bit when it comes to Scribner's errors, because sometimes how it is described to you may not be how it went. You have so very little history here, a little over a year, where we're dealing with things that go back 10, 5, 10, even 15 years, that we need to be careful what a Scribner's error is for you to change it. Because at the very bare minimum, it needs to be advised and consent after the fact, at the bare minimum, so that we could tell you. But it's better to have that before you sign, because after you sign, that creates a whole nother situation.
Yeah, I think as with any of these, it's going to require some judgment on my part in terms of what needs to come before the board and how significant could it possibly be, because you're 100% correct. I don't have the history associated with it. I have resources available to me to kind of explain the history, but making sure that the board as a whole is on that same understanding is extremely important. So even though you may see these in here, I guess my expectation or your all expectation of me would be that doesn't mean that I just have the authority to sign. You still, and you'll never see these again on certain things that I feel need to be brought up to the board and discussed within a public meeting. Those things will still be brought before the board.
But I want to remind you, we do not make policies for individuals. We make it for the position. So somebody else that may be there tomorrow may not have the same wherewithal that you do. And I will tell you, you are excellent at reaching out and communication. I very much appreciate that. But it could be another person in another day that is not, and we're not here. So I like it when it's tightened up in the verbiage.
Well, I mean, I've had individual conversations with you all about, I report to each one of you, right? And so I work at the pleasure of the commissioners.
You're very good at it.
I feel like it's something that this level of this position in and of itself requires that. So no matter who's sitting at this desk would actually, if they wanted to be successful, they'd have to do that. But you're correct that it wouldn't. I mean, it could cause issues if you had an individual that wasn't doing that. So if we'd like to make some changes for that, we definitely could. Is Mary on? Mary, are you available? Because I think that the Scribner's errors was something that you and I talked a little bit about.
Yeah, so I think, all the little things that we find, well, hopefully we won't moving forward, but sometimes the little things we find in our, contracts with the labor groups, adding this, although we did have a TA on this, we needed to add it, that kind of thing. I think is the intent, that it's the smaller ones without some kind of budget impact or policy or procedural impact.
A good example of that may be that, a recent contract that we negotiated and signed had information regarding positions that really didn't even exist or weren't filled. And so having to bring that back before the board seemed kind of overkill to a certain degree, because the positions didn't even exist within our unit.
But words are very inexpensive when putting together a policy. So putting the words into it, the absence of those words means that everything is fair game. It has to be argued after the fact.
Commissioner Schutte?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some things that in here that probably need a little bit more work and some at least some wordsmithing maybe. But you know, I think there are some things that we have consensus on. It sounds like that we can move forward now. So in those areas where there's some tweaking, I'm comfortable setting those aside and revisiting, you know, in a couple of weeks, once there's been a little bit more put around it. But I don't think any of these requests are, you know, I don't think any of these are you know, kind of inappropriate. I think these all sort of track with expectations for a position like yours. And so just once we get them tweaked up a little bit, we'll be able to, you know, maybe move all of them forward. But I think there's definitely consensus on part of them.
So the ones that I heard that we may need to wordsmith a little bit more would be the Scrivener's errors and the letters of support. Do you guys see anything else in there that you'd like me to wordsmith? Or are those that, did I cover that?
I'd be fine with that.
Same here, just with the addition of somewhere in there advise and consent, so that whatever you do on those actions are somehow shown to us, so that we know and we can question it or help to change it if we disagree with it.
Yeah. So anything that I sign is actually kept by our clerk of the board, Mackenzie, and so she has a list that she will periodically present to the commissioners, showing you everything that I've signed. But yeah, that's, I mean, that can be after the fact, and I definitely don't want to create a scenario here where you know, I'm setting myself up for failure either. So I will make sure that it's clear, and I think that we can actually do some wordsmithing to clear some of this up.
All right, and I think we still get copies of we probably will anyway, because right now we still get copies of the liquor control and things like that too.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that we'll still continue to get those, but typically those are the easiest ones to go through. And there are some the liquor control board they're having some changes brought forward, hopefully that'll get passed through the legislature this year. That'll make it even harder, or they'll have to really check what they're doing before they approve or send the letters out. So I think that, you know, that's going to make our job even easier, and the health department's job easier also. So I think you're doing a great job. I agree with the other two commissioners. It's for the position and not for the person. So yeah, a few tweaks and then we'll have it.
Okay, great. And then I think the liquor and cannabis board ones that are difficult are the ones that we received that are last minute. So I may not, they may want an answer before the next Monday when we brief the board, or we may have a holiday on a Monday, because we have a lot of holidays that fall on Monday. So that may be something else we want to talk about in terms of board schedules and how do we want to deal with those, because I think it's super important to have access to the board to have discussions and make decisions as we move forward. And so the month of February was kind of a tough one, right? Because there was a few meetings in there that kind of fell on holidays, and then all of a sudden, you know, the schedules got pushed a little bit, and so all of a sudden now it was like 2 or 3 weeks before we actually had the ability to make a formal decision from the board. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking about what does that look like. I know I've talked to Commissioner Netherland in the past a little bit about the board's schedule in the past and what it looked like, and being able to have meetings on different days and not just Monday and Tuesday, but something to think about as we move forward, you know, and maybe that's something the commissioners can kind of individually run through your head is that, are you happy with our current schedule? Do we like having regular board meetings every other week? Do we feel like there's a need to increase the frequency of those. So I definitely think once a week on briefings is super important.
One question on that one, in February, we only had the one holiday, right?
Yeah, we had kind of an interesting
Yeah,
schedule.
it was an interesting month, but we only had the one holiday. January, on the other hand, we had
President's.
two.
We had canceled a briefing Monday because I was in DC with NACO and Commissioner Trask was out of town.
That's
Yeah, but it wasn't because of the holiday, so that would
Right.
still continue no matter what we're doing.
Right.
January is a different story because you have New Year's and then you have Martin Luther King.
Yep.
But I'm not sure those are that important. Well, I don't mean it that way. I meant for meetings in January, because usually our stuff is rolled up at the end of the year. We have a lot less stuff on January. Not that the days aren't important.
it's the agendas are much lighter
Yeah.
in January. Absolutely, I would agree. So okay, well, I will work with my team to maybe wordsmith up this resolution a little bit more to make it clear, and then we'll bring it back.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback. So the next item that I have on my agenda is actually talking about the North Mason Fire Authority building lease and the use of that building. So I've talked to you individually about the fact that we have an opportunity, and I think that you're all aware that when North Mason moved forward with building their new facility, one of the things that they talked fairly publicly about was having representation from the county up on the north side, so in the Belfair area. And how could we utilize that space to provide Mason County services at some level in the north end? So one of the things that I have that I think is a great utilization of that building is we have our North Sheriff's Precinct currently that we lease. And this could be moved to this location to operate out of that. I'm looking at other things. I think that one of the items that I think is fairly easy to place into that would be a North End Emergency Operations Center. So if there was an emergency that occurred in the North End, we could actually set up shop in that building to do the emergency operations coordination piece of that. And that's something that that John and his team have looked into. How could we outfit it? And they have actually some funding sources that would allow us to purchase equipment to outfit it. Not only would it be utilized for emergency operations, but we could also utilize it for training and doing other events up in the North End. So I think that would be a valuable use of that space, as well as really looking into our departments that provide services and what could we do to make it easier for citizens in the North End to interact with the county. Because right now they're having to drive all the way down sometimes to Shelton to physically talk to somebody or, you know, physically pick up a permit. So I think that some of those things I'd like to continue to look into. I've been talking with the individual directors about what they'd like to see up there. And I think that there's some ideas. We are always at a shortage for storage space, always. So we have equipment that really needs to be stored indoors. Having equipment that is in the North End and easily accessible so that when there is an issue in the North End, having access to that equipment quickly and not having to actually transport something all the way up to the Belfair area would be super beneficial. So this discussion, you don't have a briefing packet on it because I just wanted to bring it before the board and before the individuals that attend these meetings to know that this is something that we're looking at. So I think next steps on it would be solidifying a lease with the North Mason Fire District and determining how we would move forward with potentially modifying the building. So that would require me having pre-meetings with our planning and development team to determine what would need to be done in the building. The permitting side of it all, that stuff is work that still needs to be done to get some of those details out there. But wanted to bring it before the board in this public setting to make sure that you were all comfortable with moving forward on that.
So, Mark, a few things. When I signed on to help move through their bond, I know there was things I wanted, but the county was not held to any of that. Those were just my personal wishes and hopes, and what they would support in order to get my support at the time. I want to point out that it serves two purposes for the other entities. One is if somebody from Dewata wants to come here on a good day with clear traffic, it's an hour. On a day where it's not traffic and you have to go through Belfair, it could literally be an hour and 45 minutes to come through. The same thing goes for our staff. When they leave here, if they don't have an office, something they can meet at to do different things, it could take them an hour to hour and a half and longer to get out there to service them. But I know we're not talking about all that now, just talking about maybe perhaps the lease. I think we've been on this for quite a while. I know that we need it specifically for at least a few of these things. And we've expressed our desire as a commission over and over again for some of them. I would love for us to move forward with the lease, but I want to remind you of a provision we discussed when we went and visited them, that they would give us up to 2 years of that rent to go towards
Improvements.
Yeah, improvements into the building for the things that we need. But yet we may not be able to get to that right away if we enter into a lease. So whatever lease you put together, I would hope that you would just include the verbiage somewhere in there that we could still utilize up to 2 years worth of rent for this, but not, spread it out over a 3-year period or something like that.
Absolutely.
Did that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes sense to me because I was involved in the discussion.
Yeah.
So for the other two commissioners, I actually went up to North Mason and met with Bo and one of his commissioners, and I brought Commissioner Netherland with me. And so we were kind of discussing kind of walked through the facility, took a look at it, looked at what they'd be willing to lease to the county in terms of space. So there's definitely an office building that's right out front, and then there's a pole building in the back, along with quite a bit of property that is just open property, cleared property. May have gravel in it now to a certain degree, but definitely not asphalt in all of those areas. But there's a lot of space up there, and so we. So we went and sat down with them and kind of talked about what does this look like as we move forward. And that's one of the things that they mentioned to us, is that they really would like to see us there. In fact, we all received a letter from North Mason saying, kind of knocking on our door saying, wake up, we thought we were going to move forward on this, and we haven't seen anything yet. So let's get busy, which I definitely respect that. And they'd like to have that building occupied and used, so it doesn't just sit there empty and stay cold. So we would, if the board as a whole agrees to move forward on this, definitely do that. And one of the provisions that they offered to us was being able to offset up to 2 years worth of lease costs. And the lease was, I believe, right around $2,000 a month. Yeah,
which is incredible if you think about that. That was,
when I compare that to the current space that we lease, it's really positive for Mason County. So I think that I'd love to get up there and see what we can do and move forward with it. It looks like Auditor Dunkel might have a question, Commissioner Trask.
Okay. Steve?
Thank you, Commissioner Trask. I have a question for Administrator Neary. Hey, Mark, just if you would please keep in mind the conversation we had with Marie about the potential use of that space for a future election center as part of your thought process.
Yeah, I believe that there's a lot of talk about a lot of different possibilities, and so I'm sure that we'll all keep that in mind as well as we move forward.
I owe it to Marie to keep that reminder out there, so thank you very much.
Marie is hot on that topic. She's a rock star.
She doesn't let me forget, which is important. Absolutely.
No,
Relentless.
Yes, and I believe that we received some comments too from some of our constituents, and so let's keep those in mind as well as we move forward.
Absolutely, yeah. Making sure that we go through the process that's necessary to evaluate and utilize that facility is something that we'll do.
Right,
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Schutte?
Yeah, so you know, with all the things that we do, I mean, we're constantly chasing square feet, and so having a facility of this size is always going to be a net benefit to us. And I you know, compare this to the work that we're doing at Building 10 for District Court, and you know, our ability to remodel or renovate facilities and make them useful for our critical public service operations is really, really good. We have a good track record there. And so I know having a partner like North Mason Fire will make that all the much more positive for the county and our constituents. So no problem there. Just, you know, as always, though, the devil's in the details. And so we want to make sure that, you know, when we have an agreement to review with the fire authority, that those things that Commissioner Netherland outlined are in there, and we have an opportunity to discuss that with the fire authority. And you know, I think just making sure, you know, when we come in and do a project, we absolutely always do it to code. We absolutely follow, you know, all of those things that are outlined for us, you know, from a planning and permitting perspective. And again, I point to Building 10 as a great example of that, you know, to the point where we were, you know, following the city's requirements for landscaping and some of the improvements to the walkway and things like that. So, you know, whatever concerns are out there, you know, we saw the email from Mr. Van Buskirk last week. I think his points are well made and his concerns are well stated. And you know, now the onus is on us to make sure that we're following, you know, code as it's intended, and we want to be good models of that behavior at the county for sure. So, look forward to this project going forward. And of course, you know, the other part of it too is I do want to hear from our directors a little bit more directly about what their abilities to offer services are there. I don't want to create a false expectation with the community about what's possible, and you know, so that we have a shared understanding of what those services might look like at that facility beyond the Sheriff's North Precinct and an emergency operations center with DEM. You know, what's possible, what's doable, what's realistic. You know, we always want to make sure that we're providing equitable services across the county. And so this is a great opportunity to do that, but I don't want to overextend our workforce and have them make commitments that they can't follow through on, because ultimately both they and the community suffer in those situations. So I'd like to hear a little bit more directly from them, and then kind of figure out how we start to ramp those services up over time so that it's sustainable.
Thank you. I 100% agree with you, Commissioner Schutte. One of the things that I do believe we all can agree on is that the anchor tenant of this facility would be our North Mason Sheriff's Precinct. So that's the focus that I have right now, is to say, how do I get them in there? And with the timing of the lease that they're currently in, and getting the transition to get them in that facility, that would be my first and foremost. And then while we're doing that, definitely bringing other services before the board to discuss that we could offer in the North End and be specific about it. And then the communication side of that with the public, it's super important.
Great.
So are we directing them to work on that lease?
Yes, I believe that's what I heard.
Yeah, no, make no mistake. I want to move forward with this. I want to move forward with this in a, you know, as quickly as we can, but recognize that we already have some other projects in the pipeline that, from a building perspective, that might take a little bit of time for us to get in there and you know, start putting our stamp on it. But yeah, absolutely. Let's get the lease figured out and get those expectations lined out.
Yeah, I will. I can give you a quick update on our district court. So our next phase in 2023 is to get the staff of district court out of our Superior Court building into their new facilities. So I've been working with Judge Steele and Patsy to talk about what does that look like? And we've met with our architect, and I feel like we are to a point where the actual design side of it is done. And so we will be moving forward with getting some cost estimates on what it'll take to get that work done, and then be bringing it back before the board to go out to bid. So that seems to be moving forward well. So the next item I have on here is we received a letter from Port Angeles requesting that we sign on to their application for a foreign trade zone, FTZ. I have to admit that I didn't know much about these before we received this letter, so I did a little bit of research on it to see what happened, or what is it? What does it mean to have an FTZ or to be included within an FTZ? So we are currently, although I don't see, let me pull up something here real quick. We are currently a part of the Port of Olympia's FTZ zone. So these foreign trade zones are areas where you could establish a specific operation, and it could be assembly, it could just be transferring goods in and out, but what it provides the individual operating that facility with is that it's not considered U.S. territory. So as items come onto the site, they don't have to go through customs. The individual that's operating that facility does not have to pay federal excise taxes. They can assemble, manufacture, put together, or just basically repackage items and then export them without having to go through all of that customs process. So I didn't find anything in the documentation that made me concerned about limitations that it would put. It's basically just an option. It tends to be port related. So Jennifer Bria of the EDC coordinated a meeting with tried to do a meeting with all of the ports. We actually had two ports show up. We had the Port of Shelton and the Port of Grapeview had representatives at the meeting. And then we also received some communications from some other ports. So I believe that there are some concerns with the Port of Allen and what's the other one?
Grapeview. Port of Grapeview.
Grapeview. Thank you. And so their concerns, I think, were, as a port, would they be able to establish their own FTZ? And I believe that they would, for the sole purpose that the request from Port Angeles is actually overlapping some of the Port of Olympia's current FTZ zone. But I wanted to make sure that the board understood that I did receive some concerns from those two ports as to what does it mean to them. And I see Jennifer is actually on the call. Jennifer, did I miss anything from that discussion?
The only thing I would add is that the concern from the Port of Grapeview, we had the chair of the commission on, and his concerns seemed to be allied. The comment that was submitted was from a citizen of Grapeview. It was not from the commission of the Port of Grapeview. That would be the clarification I have.
Thank you.
I would also add that it doesn't preclude us from creating our own FTZ zone. The fact that the Port of Olympia already has an established one that covers us would make the case of us applying for our own that much harder already. Because, excuse me, they do it based on ports of entry. And our port of entry is already being used by the Port of Olympia.
I don't see any harm in supporting it. I mean, if we're already included with the Port of Olympia. I mean, you can't go through their waters or can't get to us without going through their waters. Oh, Randy.
One thing to add, as a passport commissioner, some of the issues that I've been hearing are their issue is they don't know what it does. But that's not an issue for us. We can do an educational process. But if in looking into it deeper, these for the most part, we can want them to apply to us, but they really won't. We do not have any area where we're pulling in things from the outside that would not be, that would have these tariffs and the like on it. Even our airport in Shelton doesn't bring much in the way of things from outside of the United States. We just don't have anything set up for doing that here in Mason County at this point, and no port large enough. So they may want to set it up, but since they don't bring in goods from outside the United States, they don't have any type of terminal facilities. It really doesn't apply. And I don't see how they're going to get a terminal facility in any of them, except for maybe perhaps the Port of Shelton. But they're not the ones that are questioning this.
Right, Jennifer, you've got your hand up.
I was just going to add that Commissioner Netherland is correct. This only designates a service area, so it allows us to apply to that FTZ to create a site still within that FTZ. So it would be up to the business or the landowner to want to go through that process. The service area gives us a shorter process. We would apply to the Port of Olympia or to the Port of Port Angeles. So it would be up to that business to do their assessment to find out whether or not it would be worth that work. And they would be the ones that would be applying to that service area.
And they could apply to either the port or Port Angeles if Port Angeles was successful in getting their FTZ approved.
Correct.
All right, commissioners, or do you want to support this or not?
I'm good signing on the letter.
Yes.
You're nodding from Commissioner Netherland, and I'm supportive as well.
Okay, so we actually have a copy of that letter of support, so we can get that before you and get your signatures on it. Thank you. And that's all I had for support services today.
All right, so it looks like we have Commissioner Schutte with the Narcan distribution.
Yeah, thank you. So we have we've had a grant from the federal government for the past couple of years that's going away this summer. I think by August we'll need to spend it down. And in our last Housing and Behavioral Health Advisory Board, we got an update on sort of the finances and where that grant stands. And we do have a substantial amount. And so I wanted to get just kind of a head nod from the board to work with public health on figuring out some options to get a wider distribution of Narcan into the community based on what some of the allowable uses for this grant is. It would be, I don't think it would be good for us to turn money back or as much money back as we might otherwise. And so some options include some vending machine options that are being used in other places. And there's just, I think Christina has some ideas as well about just how we can get this grant spent down and some other resources into the community with it. So just wanted to bring that up and didn't want to send anybody down a rabbit hole without getting at least a head nod from the commission.
So Commissioner, you and I both agree on this one pretty heavily. I would love to see us actually reach out and purchase a lot more than we are. I'd love to see us put together. I've already talked to the head of the department about having meetings where we can bring some of these Narcans out to the public a little more readily and get some training behind them, but also to be able to purchase them at a much decreased price. Where I think originally when I had spoke with them and I was getting some for the community in North Mason, they were telling me that they were paying a little over 120 per unit. I went out and I negotiated something for myself because we didn't have, they gave me a certain amount and I wanted to supply it for all the bars in all of North Mason. So I went out and bought them myself and I negotiated a price down to $18. And then I asked them if the county was to jump on with this in the future, could we try to provide something like this for the county? And they agreed that they would find a way to do it. We'd have to just set up some type of process. for payment with them, that they would order the larger amounts and get it to us for that cut rate private price. So if we do this, I definitely in favor of going forward either which way. We don't want to lose that money, and we need to, but I think we need to purchase. I think we need to get them out in all the different forms, including the vending machines and including the more out to the public for meetings. But we have to have them on hand to be able to do it.
Right. I think we've also discussed putting them above the AED machines. That way we know where they're at.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I guess it looks like Commissioner Schutte, all three of us are very supportive.
Great. Thank you all. Continue working on it then.
And then you have the broadband action team.
I do. Yeah. So Dan Tudeberg from our extension office reached out to me last week with Dustin Loop, who's also working with WSU Extension on establishing broadband action teams. Commissioner Trask, you might be aware of these from your work at WASAC and Public Works Board, but they have an informational meeting this afternoon that I plan to attend, as well as a convening meeting next week. And so I plan to attend, but if anybody else is interested in taking this work on, happy to let you roll with it. But just wanted to let you know that we're trying to get one established here, and this is one of those things where it's not like a absolute requirement for our broadband providers to have these in place in order to get federal broadband and state broadband money. But it is an item that they look for when they make application to the state broadband office. And so just happy to see Dan and WSU kind of taking the lead on facilitating these things, but also just wanted to let the commission know.
Mr. Schutte, does this give us leverage to be able to create new areas and get services to those areas? What exactly does this do? Because as you know, I've been hoping that we get the county on board with pulling put a little pressure on some arm turning in order to provide better services to our community, especially in the north end. I deal with it in places where there's nothing at all, or we have a phone line system where you have to wait for months before getting a line because they're already used up, or when they go down because somebody steals the wire, they're down for months at a time. So broadband makes a difference in all those areas if we can get it. And if you didn't, because you got a lot on your plate, I always have a lot on my plate. If it would actually have a benefit, or there'd be a benefit with serving on the committee in order to better them, I would volunteer my time if you didn't want to. But if you wanted to, I've got no problem with you doing it.
Yeah, so this is absolutely to bring broadband into unserved and underserved areas. That's the funding that is coming available. We did a little bit of that work, if you remember, with ARPA. And so this is all about increasing access. And the terminology they use is digital equity, but it's just making sure that in parts of all of our districts have those areas where people don't have service at all, or it doesn't meet even the minimum requirements, kind of for being passable for service at this point. So I'm happy to at least get in there and bring back some information and then just kind of figure out to what extent we belong there. We're not a provider. There are certainly others that do that work, but I think in terms of advocating for folks in our community that don't have service or need better service, I think certainly we want to have a leadership role in convening and facilitating the process. So like I said, this afternoon is informational. If I bring back some information, we can maybe figure out from there, but I think it'd be great to have all of us involved in some capacity. But we'll just kind of figure out what that looks like going forward, maybe.
Yeah, I absolutely support you going forward with this. This is a huge topic and something that we work on constantly with the Public Works Board at the state level. And I'm honored to be on that board because it deals with the infrastructure, and this is considered infrastructure. So I would say I support you 100%. Go forth, Commissioner Schutte.
Great. And then I did have one other thing before we got to calendar service or updates. That's okay.
Go for it.
Yeah. So we did get a call from or an email request for project submission last week from Katie Crabtree, and Congressman Kilmer's office for community projects. And I know we're running kind of short on time here, but I wanted to maybe have us put a little bit of thought into actually submitting an application this year. This will be the third fiscal year that they've requested for community projects, and we have yet to submit on that so far. And so, I think we have a lot of projects that were kind of left, our projects that were on the ARPA list that might be ripe for community development or community project funding through Congressman Kilmer's process. And so that deadline, I think, is actually March 10th to submit on that. And so again, tight turnaround, but I think a lot of the work for some of these projects has already been done from an application perspective. I'm thinking about, our sewer needs in Belfair, maybe a few others that are on there that I certainly wouldn't reject some additional federal money coming into these projects. So any thoughts on us having staff apply for something that we've already evaluated through ARPA?
I think that's a great idea.
I think we should, it's a waste to have an opportunity pass this by again. I think we should also be including, if possible, in such a short turnaround, housing and new roads. If it's at all possible to get any support for any new roads for providing access for law enforcement, firefighters, and the like, safety. So if any of that could be utilized through that, if not, then not. But if it could, I know different projects for other safety projects could. So maybe we could look at this.
Yeah, I'd have to take a look back at I think the House just released their guidance on what's eligible and what isn't. So if you're good with that, I'm happy to work with Mark on what makes sense and what doesn't, and then he can check back in with each of you with what he finds out.
The one thing I know, commissioners, if you don't ask, the answer is no.
It's true.
Yeah, and the
No
short
guarantee.
term, so go for it.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Those are all the things that I had.
All right, since you're speaking right now, oh wait, Mark has his hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to recognize that we do have Judge Steele here, and he's later in our agenda. And I know that his schedule is fairly defined. So I was just thinking if the next topic could be Judge Steele's, that may be helpful because he scheduled this time with y'all.
All right, commissioners, do you have any issue with that?
No objection.
One for me.
All right, let's do that because we can always do our updates at the end of the meeting, so that's fine. All right, Judge Steele.
Thank you. I'll be completely honest. We finished our calendar today a long time ago, so, but I still appreciate being called. As I'm sure everybody is aware, we've run into an issue. And it is a problem that affects all of us. And that is, but it's come to head recently in that one of the public defenders who appears in this report resigned, took a job with another law firm. And at least last I've heard, and my information may be antiquated at this point, they've not been able to fill the position. That is causing problems because public defenders, for very good reasons, have to operate under case counts to ensure they don't get dumped with so many cases. They're not able to perform the services that the defendants are constitutionally entitled to receive when they're indigent. There is a statute, and before I get into that, this court has taken steps to take as much pressure off as possible. We've changed up our probation violation procedures for a lot of types of probation violations to hold off the hearings and striking the hearings if they get back into compliance, like if they didn't report the probation, didn't show proof of treatment, things along those lines, so that we don't even get to the point of having to talk about appointing a public defender. We've changed up our our arraignment calendar a little bit with preliminary appearances to hold off the appointments to make sure that these are cases the state wishes to pursue. That, in my mind, I've used this before, and I apologize. People have heard my stupid analogy before. It's probably the equivalent of taking a bucket of water out of the Pacific Ocean and asking if anybody can tell the difference. There's a statute, and this, from what I understand, the state is also looking at cases and deciding which ones maybe should not be prosecuted at this particular point in time. There's a statute that does allow the court to basically conscript private attorneys to take public defense cases at reasonable compensation. The statute does not define what that compensation is. The case I cited was the only one that I found as far as it's essentially a case by case analysis as far as what is it costing the law firm. You know, I think I read into it opportunity costs. It's having to defer work, but also paying overhead, things along those lines, with the understanding that the court needs to make sure that the law firm does not get enriched off of this, but also that it's not basically having its finances harmed by stepping up to the plate. Thus far, we have received maybe half a dozen or slightly more notices from the public defender stating they cannot appoint defendants, cannot appoint attorneys to represent defendants. One of those was somebody in custody, and Mr. Bruce Finley agreed to take the appointment, and he agreed to take it at $75 an hour, which is the going rate, and that is where we start off trying to get people to take it. I have spoken to another attorney who's willing to step up. I will emphasize, however, none of them are terribly enthused about the prospect, but as members of the bar, we have an obligation. They recognize it. So there needs to be a mechanism to have these people paid. What I propose is the $7,500 line item, and I propose we place in the public defense budget, not the court's budget, and that's in part because the court rules are very clear. We're not supposed to be having that kind of control. Although there's going to be an issue how the statute 3626.090 lines up against General Rule 42, which defines what role the court's to have in public defense. I do believe there's policy-wise good reason why it should not be in the court's budget. But I think what is desperately needed here is there be a line item so there can be a fund where these costs can be paid. This isn't something I'm looking forward to or anything along those lines. I don't like being in this situation because, quite frankly, private bar is not, like all happy about this. But there needs to be some way somehow that these fees get paid. I know there's been discussion about it going into the court budget. I've sent information to the stakeholders why that's not a good idea, and would be a lot of opposition in my own organization for that to come to pass. And I don't think there's any need it has to be, but there does have to be a place to find. And so that's what we're proposing. If you want to put it somewhere else, I don't really care, as long as it's not in the court's budget, because again, I don't think the court. Part of the reason we have the separation is public offenders should not be worried about upsetting those of whom they're going to be looking for payment. So that's what I'm asking, way I figured it. And I have no idea how this is going to go as far as how long this is going to last. I assume it's going to be an issue until such time as the public defender is able to fill the position. But $7,500, if we can get people appointed for $75 an hour, would pay for 100 hours of attorney time. I think that would be a reasonable, see what happens. And if it's not used because we get the position filled, then obviously that's money that's ultimately going to work its way back into the general fund. But there does need to be a mechanism to pay it. There is an obligation, and it's not the court's obligated to pay. It's court awards in the county that the offense occurred in pays. So I do think there needs to be a mechanism, and this is what I came up with as at least one idea. I think what the public defender's office is looking at, frankly, is something we're all looking at. All of us have issues where we've had difficulties trying to fill positions. Even getting people to apply for the position. It's not unique to the public defender's office. And I certainly hope that none of my remarks are geared towards criticizing the public defender's office, because that's not what is intended. What is intended is we have a problem. I'm trying to do our part to help manage the problem as it affects the court. And this is what at least a suggestion I have, is a way to ensure there's a way to pay these attorneys. it has been suggested I just simply dismiss. But the problem with that, first, I'm not particularly eager to do that. But even if I were, I don't really have the discretion. In other words, I don't get to decide, well, you can, tell the prosecutor you can file this case, this number of cases and no more. Filing case and what they choose to file and not file is their prerogative. It's not mine, nor should it be. The only time it may come up to where it matters is if I'm unable to appoint and the public defender is unable to assign an attorney, that where a person's due process rights are being violated, then I may have to dismiss. However, where that ever comes to pass, there's going to be a hearing and all parties involved, namely the defense and the prosecution, are going to be given a chance to be heard because they have to be given a chance to be heard. So this is my suggestion as a way to at least get us over what I hope is a fairly short-term problem. I'm not, but it is what it is. I can take any questions anybody has, but that's essentially what I'm asking.
All right, thank you, Judge Steele. I see Peter and the prosecuting attorney's offices are both on. I'd like to hear from them too to see if there's what options are there that we can all work together on coming to a conclusion or a finding. I guess, well, maybe not a finding, but Peter, go for it.
Did the commission receive the memorandum I sent to Mr. Neary last week?
Yes.
Okay. So I mean, my opinion is kind of laid out in that memorandum. In terms of $75 an hour, 100 hours, it is sort of redundant to add that to my budget because I'm already budgeted to take cases at $75 an hour. And I've already got permission from the commission to take cases at $75 an hour. And so if a case is going to be $75 an hour, then we can treat it like any of our other $75 an hour cases. We've got an entire line item for that already. We don't need a new one. The problem where we come into is if one of these cases exceeds $75 an hour. And the one case that the court has been able to conscript an attorney into at 75 was a very special situation involving a client who was both in custody and probably not competent. And so we had to move on that one very quickly for reasons I won't get into more of here. But the chances that the court finds people willing to take things at $75 an hour, I think, equal the chance that I'm able to find people to take things at $75 an hour, which is very minimal. I have managed to get Rowen Law from up in Kitsap County to agree to take 15 cases hourly. I'm in talks with an attorney out of Tacoma who might be interested in doing something at $75 an hour. And so we do have some irons in the fire to try and get coverage in March that we didn't have in February. All of this hourly stuff is essentially a Band-Aid over the problem that we can't fill this position. We've had 3 applications, 2 of which were, for lack of a better term, unqualified, including one that's been prosecuted for practicing law without a license and doesn't have a license in Washington. And then one who we sent an offer letter to and who responded that it would be a $10,000 a year pay cut and she couldn't take it. And so we're kind of out on a limb on that one. And we're trying to get someone in. HR has been very actively working at promoting us. I'm working with Mary over there and we're doing what we can, but there were some shortfalls in February. I am hoping to avoid shortfalls in March if I can get things cemented out with Woody, but if not, there will be shortfalls in March. The degree to which there are shortfalls and the amount of money to which there will be shortfalls, I do not know yet. Because Judge Steele has yet to say, okay, well, I consider up to this amount to be reasonable. I consider, right, there is no cap on that. There is simply a representation of, I will determine whether or not the costs that are submitted to me are reasonable. I don't know what costs are going to get submitted to him. I don't think he knows that. But I'm not going to be in a position to review it. I'm not going to be in a position to have any kind of control over it. And I'm not going to be in a position to have any kind of predictive ability on it. I agree that it is a good thing to keep distance between the attorney who is going to be billing and the person who is going to be deciding how much that bill is. That's what GR 42 is about. But once you invoke this statute for conscription, and once you make it so that the court is already saying it's going to be you and it's going to be for this much and this much is reasonable and here's the order, county pay it, then like that line of conflict's already been crossed. And I don't see how having the budget line under the district court, when the district court is the one that's going to be doing these determinations of reasonableness or not reasonableness, to me, the district court is the place to put that if you're going to put a budget line for anything. I would suggest that a couple of months down the road, we're going to know a lot more about how quickly we got this covered, what the costs were, that sort of thing. Because right now we're shooting in the dark. And so I'm not, I think this may be a little bit early to be having the discussion of what did it cost. It's going to cost something. The court's going to order something. The prosecutor's office and I have been working very, very hard to minimize what it's going to cost. And we've come up with some systems that are frankly efficient enough to where we may keep them even after this because they're getting some stuff done. And I see Mike's on. I'll let him talk to that a little bit. But I just think we're a little early in the cycle to say, well, it's going to cost $75 an hour for 100 hours. That's 1 month of 15 cases. And I don't know how many months this is going to go on, and I don't know, et cetera. But I will say that if you're going to budget based on $75 an hour, you've already done that, and I already have the line item for it. So if it's going to be a $75 an hour bill, it can just go to the $75 an hour billing spot, and there's no reason to have an additional line.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Mike.
Yes.
Would you like to comment?
Yeah, maybe. And Tim's here too, and we're here mostly just to watch and listen and pay attention to what's going on. I would say that I understand the reluctance of the court to have it under the court's budget. Except I also think Peter's not wrong about, if we're talking about that independence, that we're sort of already in an interesting area. The statute says the county in which the offense was committed, the court shall determine, in the county in which the offense was committed shall pay. And it's more than not a blank slate otherwise. I don't know that I've found really anything that fleshes out anything specific that we can look at. The one that I'm aware of is the case that was mentioned, which I understand was at $75 an hour. And I guess I'd say this, the advantage budget-wise of, if there is one, of having an unfilled position at the public defender's office and of not being able to find attorneys within the, not within the office, but Peter's office, or Peter specifically not being able to find a slate of attorneys that would take cases at $75 an hour is that there's already budget money there for situations where the court finds an attorney and appoints them at that rate. One thing that I think might be useful at some point is if there's any way, and we really can't and shouldn't be doing it on a per case basis, but for forecasting, it might be useful to know when cases have been doled out on an hourly basis, like kind of what is the average, if there is one, of like the overall cost to think about to forecast on a per case basis. But budget wise, if the court is going to appoint somebody at the same rate that Peter's office has already authorized and budgeted to pay them, then I guess I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be an appointment to the case to be under the supervision of and paid by the public defender's office, just like any other case would if Peter had found the attorney to take that case.
Yeah, the issue really comes when it's more than the $75 an hour, because my directive from the commission right now is to not pay someone more than $75 an hour. And so someone submits an invoice to me for $100 an hour, I'm going to reject it.
Right. And so that's the hard part and that's, I think, where I sympathize with Peter's office as well. And I want to say out loud more times than I probably have to. We don't want and should never have any influence over or input over who defendants are going to be represented by. And the budgets are the budgets. So, I mean, I've been asked, do I have comments? That's where I sympathize a little bit with the situation Peter's in, Mr. Jones is in, is what's being asked is that the commission create another budget line under the public defender's office, but over which Mr. Jones has no ability to control and no authorization to pay really more than what the county has authorized him to pay. And so that's kind of the parameters, it seems to me. We have a statute that says the court shall determine and the county shall pay, and there's really not any direction over how the county will arrange for that to be paid. And so I don't think that there's really anything that's off the table in terms of how the county feels the best way to structure that and where that should come from.
Okay.
If that makes any sense, and I hope it did, because sometimes when I talk about it, there's so many, it's really kind of so, I don't know if unprecedented is right, but really it has never really reached, from what I've been able to tell, to any kind of appellate level or any outside level where there's been lots of input or if this has been tried and found to work or not work. So Peter's right. We've worked real hard to try to not make the problem worse by triaging as much as we can on the front end of new cases or cases that are being brought back that need a new appointment in any event. Because sometimes they're just not ready for us to proceed on, or we're not capable of proceeding on them. And so being able to find those early has been a different level of lift than normal. However, I also agree that it's been beneficial for other purposes, and hopefully we can continue with it, even if this immediate need gets solved.
All right. Well, I see Commissioner Netherland.
I would like a chance to respond if I may at some point.
Okay, let's hear from Commissioner Netherland first.
Okay, well, you might want to respond because I'm not this doesn't seem as complicated to me. I've got some issues I just want to clear up. So maybe you can respond afterwards. You know, I myself, I want to say first, thank you to Mike Dorsey, the prosecuting attorney's office, and to Peter Jones. The stuff you guys have been pulling off in order to make these budgets work and the way you have worked together, I don't know if I've ever heard of it before, but I tell you what, it's a test case for anybody in any county. I hope that they find a way to work together the way you guys have, but understanding there are parameters, there are issues that Judge Steele is trying to overcome, but I can't go first without thanking you for making all this other stuff work, because we are aware at the commission level all the stuff you have been doing to mitigate some of these cases down and out and make this all work. Please don't think that we did not know, because we do. Second, Your Honor, just so you know, I had some concerns, and I mean no disrespect to you, but I had concerns as soon as I heard about this. when I heard that we appointed an attorney who actually said they only took it because you specifically had asked him to, that leads me with a question: did he do it as a special favor or under duress? But either one of them does not seem appropriate to do with the client, and the client should have some say in what's happening with them, in my opinion. But I'm overstepping my bounds because that's your court and that's for you to do. But the one part that is within my bounds is the budget. And I have never, in all the years that I've ever been here, ever thought it was okay or saw any opportunity for any other elected official or any other department to decide how somebody else's budget is spent. That is solely our duty and how we decide to do it. If you do decide you want to continue to do it in the manner you want to do it, I think that's within your rights. You are the judge, but it has to come out of your budget. Because having you have control over somebody else's budget would seem very inappropriate to me. Now, as for and I will never be in favor of that, just so you know, because literally it's never been done that way in all the years we've been here, giving somebody else control over somebody else's budget and the decisions that they have to work with. Peter, you've done an exceptional job since you came in. We had issues where I probably would have been okay with somebody taking and saying, giving the judge control over another person that had been there in the past, but you are there now, and I'm very proud of everything you've done. One of the things I see as one of the simple solutions is, this is broken. We know it's broken. We need to bring Peter in and figure out what that looks like and how to fix it and what the new parameters need to be, because it's obvious if the judge is in a position where he feels he has to do this, and we're at this point where you two, Mike Dorsey, the prosecuting attorney's office, and the public defender are working so hard and spending so many hours to mitigate everything. It's time for us to have another discussion regarding our parameters and what we're doing with those specific contracts and the ability to pay. That's my simple one. I hope I didn't go over the top of anything you wanted to say, Judge Steele. But on this one, I couldn't wait to speak. I literally think it's a simple solution, and I just think we need to move forward.
Judge Steele.
Brief response. I didn't expect this to be terribly make everybody happy or popular. I don't care. I have an issue. This is affecting how the court operates. And one of the issues I want to respond to is, it's too early in the process. With all due respect to Mr. Jones, I do respect you, Mr. Jones, and I don't envy the position you're in, although I think all of us are in a similar position as far as trying to fill our positions. But the fact of the matter is, I've already, starting a little after the middle of February, started receiving notices that you were not able to appoint anybody to or assign anybody to cover cases where public defender had been appointed. That means that we have in a position where we have to do something, because those people are entitled to be represented. And I don't think you disagree with that. I think we have a disagreement as to how best to solve it, which are outlined in the notices we're receiving from you. This is not something I particularly want to be involved with, because I don't want to be involved with the public defense. But before we get to the point, am I dismissing cases because people's rights were violated for not being assigned counsel when they were entitled to counsel? I want to exhaust the remedies. The statute, my request, I believe, fits right smack in the statute and in what case law there is interpreting it. There's not a lot of case law interpreting it because, fortunately, it's a good thing. It hasn't come up very often. A year ago, we never would imagine that we'd be in a position where you even have to be discussing conscripting other attorneys to carry some of the public defender load. But we've hit that point. I don't like doing it for any other reason. The bar is not going to be particularly happy. And I have put the word out that that's a possibility. As far as Mr. Finley took the representation because he is an attorney. He's an officer of the court, and he recognizes there's an obligation. And he agreed to take it. I don't intend to be, I'm hoping I don't have to sign any more, although actually I will have to, because I've received more notices. The difference in the court is, unlike Mr. Jones, I have the ability to conscript, although I'm going to allow people a way to avoid it if they can give me reasons and what have you. I'm going to work with people, but I do have the ability to conscript. Mr. Jones does not. Part of the concern I had, and which is why we geared up to get ready to do this when we started receiving those notices, it's simply because of the fact when we had these conversations before, I was told, and I believe every word of it, that at the time, even though the rate of compensation had been raised, there were still no takers as far as attorneys willing to step in and take what I'll refer to as off-contract case on the people that are not internally employed by the public defender's office. So the bottom line is we have a problem, and that problem is right now. We have people that are charged with court that the public defender's office is not able to assign, at least based on the notices I've received. We need to do something. As far as it should be in my court, I would suggest very strongly, Commissioner Netherland, that does not comport with the statute. It says the court awards, the county shall pay. And it's, I think that's, and again, I don't want to be involved with Mr. Netherland's budget. Although I will point out I am to a small degree involved with his budget, because I have to approve any requests for outside services such as investigators and what have you. And I thought it was silly until I had a conversation with Mr. Jones. He set me straight, and he was absolutely right as to why that's the case. So in this particular case, we have a problem now, and it's need to be resolved. I don't care if it's put in his budget or whatever. I strongly believe it should not be in the court's budget, and I do think you're going to get some independence of the court obligations. Also, if what you're referring, Commissioner Netherland, is that we should just find space for the budget we already have to pay this. I don't know if that's what you're implying or not, but if you were, that is totally going to cause extremely serious problems, because it's not in our budget to provide representation for people who the public defenders have not been able to provide representation for. That puts a conflict of interest and a separation of powers problem, because now you got the court in a position where it has to take its own budgetary consideration into account and possibly violate somebody's rights by not ordering an attorney to represent him when maybe there is an attorney he'd be willing to step in and do so. The statute also makes clear, and the case law makes clear, that I have to take on a case-by-case basis things into consideration, which makes what Mr. Jones had to say absolutely correct. I'm not able to tell people be exactly this amount and no more. I'm going to do everything I can to make it this amount. And I think the conscription will help in that process. But the point is, everybody, including this court, are working to try to ameliorate this. And it's not just public defenders and the prosecutors doing it. We've done what we can as well. But nonetheless, the problem is now. We have to do something about it now.
All right, well, I think we're all under agreement that it is the county's responsibility. And I agree that it should not be under the district court's budget, because that does look, it does not appear that it should be, a judge should not be paying a public defender. Because wow, that's the appearance is bad. So Commissioner Schutte, I think that you've been having conversations along this line. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think Mark, you've also had some communications with folks. So I'd like to hear from you so that we can maybe move this conversation along. Maybe we've got a lot on our plate, but this is a very important topic. So
yeah, thanks, Commissioner Trask. This has been an interesting issue to work on. And I kind of echo both your comments and Commissioner Netherland's. I think Peter's done a good job trying to navigate this, and he's in a tough spot because, as Mark has mentioned a number of times, we hold people accountable to their budgets. When we go into a year, we work hard on putting a budget together, and we try to make a really, really educated guess as to how much it's going to cost to operate their office, for the fiscal year. And we know in this work that, occasionally you're going to come across situations that were hard to predict or hard to kind of make a good educated guess at how much it is to cover. So Peter's doing a really good job at navigating this, and I think Prosecutor Dorsey has worked with him on a strategy that isn't ideal, but is one that helps us triage these cases on the front end in order to use limited resources most effectively. I do agree that it's difficult right now to say, based on Peter's memorandum to us that I think made a lot of really, really strong points. If we're going to put this sort of arbitrary $7,500 price tag on what it's going to take to fix it, or to address this issue, that itself is a super short-term look at sort of the scope of the problem. And so I do think that it's a little premature to be doing things like that right now. I do think that, if there are overages, then we need to be responsive to that. But I think we need to let some of this play out a little bit more with the work that Peter's doing, before we start having other offices, not just conscript attorneys into doing this work, but conscript other offices' budgets into doing that work for them. And so I'm not prepared to take any action on this request today. I think there's more to come on options and some potential workarounds in the near term. But as we look big picture, this is, I guess, maybe some comfort in a situation like this, is we're not alone. I mean, I think it's not because people don't want to be public defenders, or people don't want to do certain jobs. I mean, this is in Mason County. This is a statewide issue. Peter's association is well aware of it. Mike's association is well aware of it. Our association is well aware of it. And there needs to be some right sizing that happens at the state level in order to address the systemic problem. But what isn't going to help us solve this is if we have two-thirds of the equation rowing in one direction and 1/3 rowing in another. And so I think what I'd like to see happen here in the short term is, again, another opportunity for both the Office of Public Defender, prosecuting attorney, and district court to continue working on this before we get to the point where we're encumbering other people's budgets, and continue to try to work through it that way. While Mary in HR works with Peter on a recruitment strategy, while Mary works with Mike on a recruitment strategy. Mike needs attorneys too. We ended up in this position where it felt like we had a lot of attorneys, just sort of broadly, not in Mason County. Like everybody, you couldn't walk very far without tripping over an attorney. And now I think, across the state and nationally, we are in this weird position of saying we need more attorneys, which I don't think anybody ever thought that they would be saying that. And so,
God help us.
Right. So, there are some things that are outside of our control. And so where we have the ability to control the process, we need to do that. And I think Mike and Peter are working on that. So I'm willing to let that play out a little bit more before we start making any commitments to budget adjustments right now.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Do you have anything to add?
I think that everything that I discussed with all the parties present was already discussed. So just more of a process side of things in terms of how do we want to move forward.
All right. But Randy, you're muted.
I do have a request. I request that we actually pull this together for our next Monday briefing with a provision for requests from Peter Jones telling us where we need to be so we can at least begin the process of addressing the underlying issue immediately and not wait. He's been talking to us about this for a while, but we don't have an actual proposal. I know Peter knows what he's talking about. I'd love to see an actual proposal from him so we can maybe get this rectified the way it should be, which should be through his office, not other offices, not other things. And it's not his fault we're in this position. It is budget, it is the world, it is everything. But we have to start with somewhere, and I'd like to start with Peter Jones and getting a proposal.
Well, I believe that Peters has the 7,500 in his budget right now, so I don't know. I'm wondering what type of proposal you're talking about.
To increase the fee that we pay for the contracts. He's limited on what he can pay. We probably need to have a discussion about what those costs look like. And in order to contract with other people, do we need to allow him more leeway? Because in the beginning, if we made a change, we wouldn't have to adjust his budget immediately. He could wait till the next budget adjustment too. We just give him the parameter to work with the monies that he has with a larger payment, if that's what's required right now, or whatever thing that Peter needs to tell us that we need to change in order to get him to sign up some more contracts at the bare minimum.
Right. So Peter, you have 7,500 right now, and that should get you through March.
I have more than 75.
More than that. Right.
I am budgeted for the year for hiring attorneys to take cases at $75 an hour.
Yes.
Correct. And I believe that's also a contract issue.
It's actually a case-by-case issue. The contract issue is through Sean Tashner's office, and they get so much per month to take X number of cases, 16 cases a month. The hourly is when we don't have an employed and we don't have a contractor, I need to reach out and find someone to take something. And that's always kind of the ad hoc fallback position. And so the hourly is always my last result, because it is the most expensive per case way of dealing with these things. But where I don't have a contract with someone, and there's really no one interested in a contract, and where I don't have an employee, then we've got to talk about hourly. And certainly I would be happy to come to the commission. I can say right now that my suggestion would be to first bump it to $100 an hour. If we bump it past $100 an hour, we're going to have additional conversations and additional costs, because we would then be bumping our misdemeanor rates higher than we pay people to do felonies.
Right.
So if we go above 100, we've got to increase 2 budget line items by that pro rata. And so I would prefer to try it at 100 rather than start getting that much more complicated.
Right now, that was more of what I was addressing.
And so that would be my initial suggestion. And I'm not sure, I mean, if you want me to write it up for next Monday, I can certainly do that. The complication for fixing the problem as a whole is a lot more complicated. It involves union discussions, because the real problem is not being able to get someone into the position. And when you look on the WDA recruitment board and there's 20 positions posted and we're the lowest paying, I'm not getting anyone in, right?
Right.
So, except
that doesn't make it
the
easier, does it?
No, it does not. And so the real fix for the problem comes there, but that involves labor negotiations and is a more complicated issue than I could get to a briefing in a week.
Yes.
Right. So, if I could just make a suggestion, instead of giving you a week, I would like to see things. Let's give it the rest of March, and see where you're at. Maybe you can come. Maybe the 3 of you can come back to the commission and give us an update. Maybe see how things are going. I know that there are other options also. You can, as far as charges go, there are tools in your belt that you could use also. Mark, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Commissioner Trask. Yeah, so I think that as long as the board understands that that Peter built his budget based on $75 per hour, you've authorized him a certain dollar amount to pay for the cost of hiring outside counsel. So I don't think that there's anything specifically that requires him, unless Peter can show me where we need to take it back to the board to authorize him to go up to 100. But I thought it was just your budget was built based on a $75 an hour assumption.
Correct.
So as long as the board's aware of that, then he can continue to move forward. We're early in the year. He can monitor what that cost is and where it's going to be. And then when he needs to, he can come back to the board if necessary and ask for additional funds from a budgetary perspective. The other part of it is into the labor side. And the labor side of it is that there's currently an agreement with Peter's employees through the end of 2023. So Mary and myself will be negotiating that contract for 2024 and moving forward on it. But absolutely understand Peter's concern and the challenges that he has for what he currently pays per case for the different types of representation for the different types of crime or levels of crime. Or charges, and then go from there. So I think that he has my whole point is I believe he has the ability to manage it now. I just want the commissioners to be aware that he may have to come back in the future.
Yeah. Do you have the ability to manage it now, Peter? Because I remember you bringing those to us.
Yeah, so I brought it to you and as part of the budget process and said, I want to raise the rate from $50 an hour to $75 an hour.
Yes.
Will you allow me to do that through this budget? And so I am actually unsure, and I do not feel like I have the authority to say, no, we're doing it $100 an hour now, and then come back and ask the commission for forgiveness instead of permission, right? That doesn't seem like the way I should be doing it.
I appreciate that.
And that's why I suggested what I did, that we just come together, give him the permission to be able to do it and document it. And then we don't have any issue there. And he can start to at least take some of the pressure off. I know it's not going to fix everything, but the more things he can bring in a proposal so we can take off the pressure, we should do that. Peter comes to us so very rarely. It's obvious it's needed. I would still love to see him come to us and tell us what we need to do to relieve the pressure as we work on the grander scheme for the long term.
I can certainly present that briefing next Monday. That's not, I basically presented it here. We just haven't gone through the formal process.
Well, and the other aspect is if the commission says yes, and will Judge Steele also recognize that as the action that he feels is necessary to help move things forward so he can be more comfortable in his position. Because I'm not trying to step on you, Your Honor. I'm trying to make sure that we stay within what we can do and how it should be done. I understand what you want done. The question is the place you are taking it may not be the perfect one, at least for me, but maybe we can find another way to get you where you need to be to where you have those people that are necessary.
If I can respond, Commissioner, two things. First off, I would love to not be in a position to even be here and having to deal with this issue. I also want to be real clear. I think I have, but if not, I want to be real clear that this is on the record. I am no way, shape, or form blaming Mr. Jones for the situation, why we have what we have. I could say something wouldn't be very nice that we all have to take a bite of, but unfortunately, that's the situation we're in. Anything that would get this problem solved, I'm going to be in favor of. I have my own ideas, but really they concern other departments. So I'll keep on that and I'll keep my big yap shut. But in the meantime, then I'm assuming then when the people I've appointed say it's time that they finish the cases, and they probably won't quickly, they should then just submit the bill to the public defender's office is what I'm hearing. And that's what I will advise those attorneys to do.
Well, and I think that's where it should go. It should, in my opinion, not be under district court judge line item.
A lot of things in life I'd like, but this is not one of them.
And I personally am not prepared to say that because I think that we should work within the parameters that we have. And if you're appointing and making these decisions, they're not accounted for in other places. I think the decision needs to stay with you and the consequence needs to stay with you until we adjust your budget.
If we do that, Commissioner, then we're in violation of a state statute. So we may have to have this conversation another day.
And I believe that this is a budget discussion. And so in my opinion, I think the commissioners should talk about the budget together, because that's our job. And so if we could have Peter come before us next Monday, if that gives you enough time. As a proposal, and then let's go for there. I think that we could go deeper and deeper into this discussion, and I don't think that this is the right time or place for that.
And I don't anticipate that we're going to be receiving a bill in the next week. And so I don't think that we have to have that issue settled by next Monday. We are going to want to figure out when an invoice comes in for $150 an hour and Judge Steele signs an order saying $150 an hour. Right now, my instruction from the commission is to turn that down.
Right. Well,
right. That's where I am right now.
Right. Because the board agreed that it should be $75 an hour.
Right. And so that is why that bill would then go towards the district court, having been the ones appointing. And I don't believe it's a violation of state law to do that. In fact, there are a number of counties that still run all of their public defense services from contract directly from the court.
Yep, they do.
And so it doesn't violate any laws, and it doesn't violate any conflict of interest provisions to have the amount that the court is ordering paid for out of a line in the district court budget. And so that is my suggestion on how we handle those things, so that the person who is in full control is also responsible for the money.
All right. So I think that I'm gonna, because we're going long here, and I think that we could let's just say that Peter's going to come before us again. We're all going to discuss the budget and the amounts that need to be either changed or moved ahead. We all agree that it's $75 that's set. And I'd like to hear from the other two commissioners, but that's where I stand. $75 is set. Peter will come before us with another briefing and let us know if we need to adjust anything, and then we move on from there. Commissioner Schutte or Commissioner Netherland, you have anything?
I'm good with that approach.
Can I ask one question real quick? We do have one that I know of that we've assigned off of this RCW, and there will be a billing coming in, whether it comes to me or whether it goes to the prosecutor. But if it comes to me, I just need to know what budget. I don't have a budget line to pay out of that. So that's where this comes in.
Mm-hmm. And Madam Chair, that's where my comment actually comes in. I am not prepared in any way at this meeting without an actual action of the board to say differently, which you can, to have any other department spending another department's budget and making determinations on what they spend it on, who they spend it on. That's not anything I'm prepared to do today. So when the question that was asked was, who does he turn it into? At this point, I'm not prepared to vote to give any other person the ability to step into Peter's budget or to Mike Dorsey's budget or to Dave Wyndham's budget or anybody else's budget, except for those that we've given the budget authority to.
Right, and I would agree with you there. What I'm trying to do is make sure that everybody knows that it's set at $75 an hour. That's what the board agreed to, and that's what we put into Peter's budget. And so now everybody knows that it's $75 an hour. Mark, maybe you could work with Patsy and get that. And
yeah,
then,
I can get a line set up within the district court budget where it can be tracked appropriately and recorded correctly. I think what would be necessary then in the future is Patsy is correct that she was not included in her original budget. She never thought she'd be paying for defense attorney. So the district court will have to come back to the board, and I believe that the board today understands that some of those costs may be incurred, and that we would do the necessary budget adjustment to provide them with the funds to pay those, especially that are done at $75 an hour.
Again, I know I'm not saying that, Mark. I'm definitely not saying that for myself. Maybe for this one bill, I can understand it. But if I say it that way, that's saying that we're creating a whole new budget line and not determining what's in that budget line for somebody else to determine to spend. And that's definitely not what I'm prepared to do today.
I don't think for this one bill, we need to concern ourselves overly because Patsy, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the one with where Bruce Finley was hired. And I believe he agreed to the $75 an hour rate.
Correct.
So I'm not concerned about this one
Yeah.
because it's already agreed to at $75 an hour. It's going to be at the rate and it can come to me. And so that's not as much of a problem. It's only if it exceeds the $75 an hour that it becomes a problem.
And
And
because
I
it
don't
is
think
your
we've even
department,
signed a case out on that yet.
and because it is your department, you can choose to pay it off. I have no problem with any of that.
Yeah.
I just don't want it with the expectation that whatever's created has to be paid in that, in a different department. But if Peter says to pay it, we're paying it. That's simple enough.
Well, if it's indigent defense services at $75 an hour, that is my directive to pay
Yeah.
that. Like,
I'm
Yeah,
good.
that works for me then. So absolutely easy then. If it's $75 an hour, then I can work with Peter to make sure that he keeps me apprised of anything that would go outside of that, or if there's concerns. But I mean, if it's just Judge Steele kind of helping him recruit an attorney to come and help him with overflow, then and it's at $75 an hour, then I'm good with it.
All right. And I would like to add that we all know that this is a huge issue and it's an important issue, and it's a mandate from the legislature that we provide services. Unfunded mandate, I want to say. But so I think we're all come to an agreement here, and everybody understands where everybody else is sitting. And so let's work on it, work together. And if we need to, we'll have a work session on this or something like that instead of bringing it to a briefing. I think that this is more work session worthy.
Okay.
I'm not talking for the other two commissioners, but that's my feeling.
No, and if there is a line item within the budget, I don't remember what the number is, but I'm sure that if something had to be done, you have professional services that could be under that line item. I'm just saying.
Commissioner Netherland, I think that there's a specific bars line item where we track all of the costs for indigent defense. So it would just be if it no matter where it comes from, as long as we record it to indigent defense cost.
That's what I was gonna say, if it's indigent defense, but if it comes out of the court's budget, then they can spend it out of professional services. They have bottom line authority under maintenance and operation under wages. So how they choose to spend it is up to them.
Jen could create another expenditure line within the district court's budget that would properly reflect that it went towards public defense, and it wouldn't have to go to professional services. Commissioner Netherland, I think the importance of it is making sure that we track all of the costs associated with providing that specific service. So yeah, it wouldn't.
And I wasn't saying it had to. I'm just saying if they had to. It's that simple.
Yep.
All right. I think we're good to go, right? All right. I see head nods, thumbs up.
Yes.
See you next week.
Thank you all for, thank you all for coming and for the lively discussion. And just know that we appreciate you all.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to community development. Kell?
Good morning. Or
Morning.
no, yep, still morning. We have Marissa.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
I have a rezone from Fred Jones, request to rezone 3 parcels from rural residential 5 to rural commercial 2. He is the owner of the Pickering storage there on East Pickering Road and East Spencer Lake Road. So he has an existing storage facility. It's about 8 acres. It's currently rural commercial 2. And then the request is for 3 parcels to the south of that existing facility. It's currently all treed. And then it is bordered on the south side by East Forest Cove Road. The Planning Commission heard this request at their meeting in February and unanimously recommended to you approval of the request. And so just hoping to get this moved forward so we can get it for public hearing on April 25th. I have April 11th on the briefing, but I had to change that to April 25th.
And this is bordering the other one, the other commercial property.
Yes, it is bordering the other commercial property.
I'm in favor of moving forward, Commissioner.
Same.
All right, same.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Merce.
Thanks.
All right, Kell, I think that was the only thing that you had.
Yeah, I do want to say though that we decided this morning we're going to cancel our half-day closure next week, Tuesday the 14th. For SmartGov training, we have an agenda, we have lots of things to learn, and we all realize there's not a single one of us that can train the others about what we need to do. So Todd and I are going to spend some more time doing research. We had a SmartGov person reach out to us late last year, and we thought that was going to be an avenue for us, and it's not. It's more of a salesman type person. So we'll just be doing some internal training before we go out, and likely look at the June timeframe to do the afternoon closure. So just let the public know we'll be open all day on March 14th.
All right, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, before we move on to the next one, can we take a 5-minute break, please?
5 minutes. Sounds good. Commissioner Schutte, you agree with that?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. We'll see everybody in 5 minutes. All right, commissioners. Are we ready to move ahead?
Ready?
All right, let's move on to Public Works. Loretta or Mike?
Yes, we are here. Richard's going to start out.
All right.
All right, hopefully, can you hear me?
Can.
Yeah, I have a sketchy microphone system, so that's a good start. Free dump day. I got a news release for free dump day. And I know that's exciting, but I want everybody to hear this first. It doesn't start until March 15th. March 15th, and there's a couple of changes. We still have United Way will have 300 vouchers as normal, but Youth Connection offices in Belfair will also have another 150 made available to them directly. And then, unlike last year, we do have a drop dead date of June 30th this year, and that's just so we could get them all collected because our long haul contract has an expiration. We expired this year at August 23rd unless we are able to get that renewed. That's another briefing coming soon. So that is your free dump day without reading it.
On that contract, has there been any discussions about extensions? Do we have the ability to extend? Are they asking for an increase?
You know, there's been just some real cursory talks with Republic at the moment. They do want to extend. I do believe it's possible. I'm getting an RFP prepared just in case.
Just remember in the past, we had those issues where we tried to extend, but there was a change in contract and it brought the community into lawsuit. So just remember, it's not an extension if it changes the parameters of the contract. It is a new contract.
Amen.
But if so, I'm definitely supportive if they want to, supportive of considering looking at just an extension. They've been very good with us.
Yeah, I agree. They've been good to work with. Okay, second item I got, Solid Waste Advisory Committee membership appointments. I've got 3 people that would like to be reappointed, and I've got 3 possible new appointments, and I've got 3 vacancies. So a series of 3s. The 3 people I have that would like to be appointed are Thomas Duffield, and he's in Citizen District 1. Let's see it. Sharon Trask, who's on our meeting today. And Special Group Agriculture is Tessa Halloran from the Wazoo Extension Office. Those would be the new appointments. The reappointments would be Linda Links from Citizen District 3, Delroy Cox representing business and consulting. And then Chad White, who is representing the solid waste industry, Mesa County Garbage.
All right, commissioners, do you want to interview?
I think we should interview you, Commissioner Trask.
I don't know. I hear she's pretty
Denied.
sketchy.
No, just kidding.
She's sketchy. I don't know.
I'm comfortable with moving forward without interviews with this slate.
Since we're 3 shy, I would agree, unless there's one that anybody's worried about. I don't see anything.
Yeah, and I also would like to move ahead on the reappointments.
Right. Appreciate it.
All right, next up, we have creating a county road project number 2046 for Bear Creek Dewato Road, milepost 0.43 to milepost 1.02. This is up near the rock pit there on Bear Creek Dewato. And we have RAP funding for this. This area has multiple accidents, so we're looking at realigning the road and improving the horizontal curve there. Estimated project cost is around $680,000, which county matching funds would be about $86,000 of that. So we're looking forward to it'll be a good project.
Looks good to me. Commissioners?
Supportive.
Next up is creating a county road project number 2047 for the Skokomish Valley Road, milepost 3.80 to 4.60. That's what they call the DIPS project. Conservation District's been overseeing this project. I believe the total project is 4.8 million. But this funding here is a FLAP funding, so that's Federal Land Access Program of about 1.6 million that the Public Works is overseeing, and that monies will be spent in the roadway right away, so it won't be anything outside of that. We'll create a county road number. The Conservation District is trying to get their final permits in to actually go out to bid this summer.
That's cool.
Supportive.
Same.
And that's all we have.
Wow. Commissioners, do you have anything for Mike?
I do. Mike, last week, I had made a comment to you and Loretta about not getting any calls and how wonderful that was. Well, I had a call, but I need to share with you. Well, nope, it's not what you're thinking. As a matter of fact, Mr. Flynn, calling representing the Maggie Lake Homeowners Association, called to say that they want to express a special thank you to the Belfair crew and especially Rod LaRue for the incredible service that they have provided for this community for the last 3 snowstorms that they've dealt with up there on the top. They are a secondary and third tier road system. So the fact that they've been serviced, that says even more than that phone call. But he was very specific who he wanted thanked, and he wanted us to know that the last 3 snow events, they've taken care of them in a manner that they couldn't be prouder. So please send a thank you from that community and from myself to Rod LaRue and his crew. And again, to you guys, because the truth matters, you're all connected. So thank you very much on behalf of that community and myself.
I will pass that on, and they're really fine tuning, doing a good job of these last storms here. So
Very cool. Commissioner Shooty?
Nothing for me.
All right. Nothing other than you guys are doing a great job, and we truly appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda.
Madam, I'm just thinking that I made us take a break. Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
Before I second that, do we want to do any calendar updates? We punted on that.
All right. Do we have any of us doing anything? Because I believe we have a meeting next Tuesday. So during this week, do we have anything things often come up and we often have to go to the same thing at the same time?
I have a special cemetery meeting that's popped up. You guys won't be there for that. Personnel meetings for Orca that popped up. That's between what we talked before. The legislative planning, I will probably be tuning into that, and I don't think I mentioned anything. Is anybody doing the planning team?
I'm not.
You said yes?
The emergency?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I may show up there, so we may both be. And I think that's the only additions that I have.
All right, Commissioner Shooty, anything?
Yeah, so opioid stakeholder meeting on the 8th. And then our Memorial Hall, our VFW is honoring telecommunicators on the 11th, that's Saturday. So I plan to attend that as part of MACECOM's board, and then the broadband action team that I mentioned is meeting this afternoon, and then again next Monday afternoon as well.
All right, the only thing I have additional on my calendar is a meeting on Saturday for the Shelton Youth Connect Gala. Okay.
Great. So Commissioner, if your motion to adjourn stands, I will second that.
Yep, I move to adjourn and take a second.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Guys have a nice week or whatever.